I recently participated in a 32-man sealed event. It was online through a hidden fortress up in Simi Valley, California. They did a great job organizing it. They shipped you packs, and then we played a sealed event over Discord, and it was a great time. I went 4-1 out of 32 people, so I was really excited. And it was my first Welcome to Rathe sealed event. I've done a draft before, but not a sealed event. And I wanted to share with you my building process, what I chose, and why. I noticed there's not as much sealed information out there. And if you're excited to do your first Welcome to Rathe sealed event, it's kind of nice to understand uh, sort of the motivations to go into one hero or another. And so laid out in front of you is my sealed pool. I got lucky and I pulled a Heart of Findel. We'll talk about that later. Obviously it's great to pull Fable, but when you're talking about like a sealed event, making the decision to put it in your deck or not is actually really important. So we'll go over that later. So here's the pool. So you've got your generics over here, generics over here. My equipment, we've got your 4 classes. So generally when you're starting to build, what you really want to look at is your sealed pool or your generic pool. It's good to understand kind of, since it's most of the cards, you can obviously see that there's almost twice as many generic cards as like individual class cards. So it's really good to understand where does the generic pool sort of move you into. So you kind of almost have 2 camps, and there's probably some hybrid, but when I first think about it, I think about like, okay, am I going sort of for the bigger classes, potentially like Brute Guardian, things like Pummel, larger attacks, um, 6 attacks for Brute specifically. Guardian, you're looking for blue cards. Or are you looking for more of the lower, like go wide strategies, such as for Ninja, you want like 0 cost cards, Scar for Scar Red, Razor Reflexes to give your attacks go again, to make sure you can get as many attacks in as possible. For Warrior, it's a little different because Warrior, although they really can do very well with a lot of attack actions, generally having like Razor Reflex, Scar for Scar is always great, Snatch, uh, generally it's going to be a very complementary pool, but Warrior I would say is almost the most dependent on the in-class cards to really drive you into that pattern, because Warrior is so dependent on their weapon and buffing up their weapon, as well as their play pattern of really closing out a game and pushing through damage through their attack reactions, leveraging reprise. That's definitely something you want to keep in mind, because potentially what could happen is that you're like, oh man, I have a great pool, I like Warrior, but then your generic pool could have been better spent maybe even in Ninja, right? Like Ninja, you have access to the Kodachis, which generally are very good in sealed or limited formats because they do eventually close out games. They're one of your win conditions in that if you have a 0 cost card, even if it's yellow and it's 0 cost, you can just attack for 2. That allows you to block with the other 3 cards in your hand and still keep tempo. You're either getting a card, an armor block, which is really even more important in sealed because generally you don't have a lot of armor. So that's something really to consider. It's like, okay, well, I'll just put all my good generic cards, put them into Ninja, and then I can rely on some of the Ninja cards instead of the Warrior. For Brute, I would say, from my personal perspective, and others may have different opinions, Brute is probably one of the hardest ones to build, mainly because of their discard requirement. So generally, a lot of their cards ask you to discard a card with cost 6 or greater. So you do get value there, but you're more RNG focused. Also, Brute is one of the harder ones to not, you generally don't block with Brute. So you're trying to keep your entire hand, you're trying to be the aggressor. You know, if you lose tempo because you have a bad swing of luck throughout your game, generally your opponent might be able to take advantage of that. So that's something definitely to keep in mind. And it looks like I got an extra flock of the Featherwalker, so we'll just stick it down here. It happened to be in the Brute card while I was looking. So let's just review really quickly the card pool. I think this was a really solid card pool. Again, this is my first sealed event. I don't really have anything else to compare it to. I've done some Monarch sealed, but again, this is the first Welcome to Rathe sealed. So, first thing that really, you know, really lucky about this pool is I have a equipment slot. All of my equipment slots are filled. So I've got the Iron Rod plate, the Heart and Cross straps, super strong card in any limited event or limited format. The ability to just get like 2 resources. Essentially, this is a card to pitch. Very strong, mainly really strong in Brute, Guardian. Ninja also has a few cards, but depending on your generic pool, it really doesn't matter. It could help you pay for a pummel because it lowers your cost of your larger cards by 2. So like, say you have a 3-cost attack, you want to pummel it. You're like, okay, well, I'll pitch a blue, Heart and Cross straps, attack, threaten, pummel. Really strong. Got the Iron Rod legs, just a basic good blocker. Really nice to have. Hope Merchant Hood, surprisingly pretty good in sealed. You know, depending on who you're playing, you could generally say like, okay, well, it gives you a chance to like mulligan your hand. I don't really have a lot of good advice for like in play, but just having the option to say, hey, I look at my hand, it's kind of a dud. I really want to just try to get 2 different cards than this. The other really cool thing is as you get later in the game, you pitched a lot of cards, and sometimes actually shuffling your deck can be advantageous. So you're like, okay, well, I put a lot of valuable cards at the bottom of my deck. Maybe you like pitched a defense reaction to pay for another defense reaction, so you can kind of spread them out so you're not just stuck with a bunch of them. You could shuffle your deck, hope to get a defense reaction off of that. That's kind of cool. Goliath Gauntlets, similar to Heart and Cross Straps, really good combo. Goliath Gauntlets basically allows you to, a card with cost 2 or greater, you can destroy the Goliath Gauntlets and give the attack +2 attack. So both the Heart and Cross Straps and the Goliath Gauntlets really synergize well together. 2 cost attack gets +2 and reduced by 2 can be really strong. You're kind of going for, you're trying to either like push through extra tempo to keep your tempo going, or like to try to close out the game. +2 potentially with like Dominate with Guardian can just close it out, and then again with the cross straps. So those equipment generally are used for bigger turns. I try to pair them together if I can on a turn. For the Goliath Gauntlets, they're just a big threat on the table. So if you burn them too early, your opponent may actually thank you and say, hey, it's super early that you burn them. I've got plenty of life left. I'll just take the 2 extra damage. Same with the cross straps, using it too early and saying, hey, I really just want to like get this really cool turn off. But late game, especially when cards are at such a high quality because you're like trying to really keep your hand size up and not block as much, keeping those cross straps for late game are really nice. Yes, they don't block, but I think the fact that they give you 2 resources is super important. There's also the Iron Rod plate. Super awesome that I've got an option. If I came up with a matchup, I was like, okay, maybe even against a warrior player, to say, okay, I don't need the 2 resources. I'm going to be on the defensive. I could switch out for Iron Rod plate, and having 2 legs and a plate, offering 2 extra blocks. So I could say like block for 3 or block for 2, and then maybe have a 4 block defense reaction, so I could block for 6 against a warrior player. That's really nice. So I block for 2, maybe I take the damage, maybe I let them give me 4 back, but if they have like an on-hit effect, maybe, if I had a defense reaction in the arsenal, that could really shut down their reprise ability. So it didn't come up, but it is still something to think about. So again, really super strong that I got all 4 slots filled. It's super, again, back to RNG, but more for the draft and limited format. Getting equipment can be really strong. It's a card that will always be available to you every game, so it's often good to prioritize them very highly. I would almost say Heart and Cross Straps is like a super or even a majestic quote-unquote like rarity level. Like no one's going to fault you for picking it super early. It keeps you open. It's going to be in you every game. It really helps you with your resources. It costs nothing. Keep in mind it does break the chain, so some things you have to be consider of, like, hey, for Ninja specifically, if you're trying to, you can't use it for a combo effect. So like say you open up with like a head jab, you want to play open the center, costs 2. If you head jab, open the center will not get a combo because you popped heart and cross tramps. You'll break the chain. Open the center won't see head jab as the previous attack in the chain. It will be a new open. It will open a new chain, so you won't get the combo. So you'll get the reduction, but you won't get the combo. So you can't trigger it before head jab because it would reduce head jab's ability cost, which is already 0, which would not be favorable. And then then you want to open the center. Surging strike, on the other hand, super great. You pop Goliath gauntlets potentially in cross straps. Surging strike potentially into like an on hit effect. Get Katsu's ability off. Then follow up with like a really strong Whelming Gust Wave. Hopefully they've blocked heavily against the Surging Strike, or you just get cards out of their hand. Again, it all depends on your gameplay. So then we've got the equipment, super strong. Again, very swingy, probably in sealed specifically, but it does all of the advice definitely lends itself to draft format because you usually have the opportunity to decide if you want to pick equipment over a deck card. So once you have kind of your equipment, you take a look at it, see if it helps you or not. Most of the time, you're always going to run them if available. Most of the time, you'll pick the in-class equipment over those. Very rarely. If you get lucky enough to pull the legendaries, those are a whole different conversation because they're so rare that you really have to decide if it's going to pull you into the class. Most likely you would be really excited if you can, but I'd be very wary of saying, okay, well, I want to play this legendary. I don't care what my card pool is. I'm just going to throw some cards together in that class, hope for the best. Because even though the legendaries do generally block favorably, I don't think they're going to offset 30 cards of bad deck building, right? Okay, so I've broken up the generics. If you're not familiar with the set, I may not show every card, so you may have to look up the name and then what the effects are. But generally, when you're looking for blues, you're looking for blues that would be good in Bravo, so that you can pay for his large attacks. Generally, things that cost 3 or greater are really good in Bravo, so that's something you're looking for in your generic pool for blues. Also, for Ninja, you're looking for 0-cost blues. That allows you to do the Kadachi pay for 1. So like a leg tap, Flock of the Featherwalkers, pretty much any like 1-cost attack. That's what you're thinking about for blues. Generally, again, other colors like yellow, 0 costs are great in Katsu as well because they do pay for Kadachi, but blues, definitely something to look out for. Then for yellows, generally for yellows, it's mostly focused on like Brute because Brute really does like yellows because you can pitch them to pay for Romping Club. But in general, yellows, you're always, they're the middle ground. So like getting good cards, probably just great. I have like a Snatch here, a Scar for a Scar, 2 Pummels, super cool. Like it could be great in Brute. You're paying for, you can pitch them early for the Romping Club, so you get them too early in your hand. You don't have quite the resources, but they do pay for themselves, which is nice. So you could like have 2 Pummels in your arsenal, or you could have 2 Pummels in your hand, pitch one to play for the other, then the other one comes back around late on. And you've got your red generics. Red generics, they can really help you out. Red Scar for a Scar is probably one of the best generics. You could block for 3 cards in hand, play Sink Below for 4, play for a Scar for 4 without paying for anything, potentially have Go Again if you take less life. It's such a versatile card. If you got it in your sealed pool, again, we're talking specifically about sealed, it's all about luck, but it's generally something that would almost go in every deck. I think even if you're a Guardian player, often having like 2 Scar for a Scars, so if your opponent's coming at you really strong, you have to decide to block. Just coming back with a single attack, you either have the option of like Scar for a Scar, or you could attack with your Anathos. Scar for a Scar could also be played before you attack as a Guardian. So you're like, okay, well, I got a Scar for a Scar in my arsenal. Pop it, I have less life than you, I'm going to attack for 4, Go Again, then threaten a large Crush effect or an Anathos swing. So Scar for a Scar red is super strong. Razor Reflex red, strong in almost every one. Brute, maybe a little bit on the fence with between Pummel and Scar for Scar. They generally have like 1 and 2 attacks, not really 3 and not really no zeros. So deciding between Pummel and Razor Reflex is definitely something you'll have to think about. Is like you don't want to get stuck with a bunch of 1 attacks and have Pummel in your hand and a bunch of 2 attacks with Razor Reflex in your hand, right? Also, Pummel, I believe, only works on the club, right? So Pummel more favorably if it's synergized with the club, although Razor Reflex giving your 1 attack Brute attacks go again, also pushing through damage. Nothing to sneeze at. Getting 2 attacks in with Brute, super strong. Although, again, the downside, you may have to discard cards, but if you have a bunch of generic pools, it's pretty cool. So looking at, main things, really high value attack action cards, blue, yellow, red. Attack reactions, Razor Reflex, Pummel, super strong, forcing your opponent. Generally, especially in sealed, people are very conservative with blocking because otherwise they just run out of cards, right? You lose tempo. The other one that's not noticed here, noted in this pool, but really good to look at is Nimble Strike and Nimbleism. Super strong combo. You play Nimbleism into a Nimble Strike. You banish the Nimbleism. Nimble Strike gets go again. I'm not going to pull the card, but I have a Nimble Strike. But you can see I have no Nimbleisms. So sucks, but the other one is Slogism and... Oh, I can't remember the name. There's an attack action that's similar to Nimble Strike. I don't have it off the top of my head because again, it's not in my pool of cards. So it's Slogism plus the associated. It's like a 3-cost attack, but I think you can banish Slogism from your discard pile to give that card a bonus, and that's really strong in Welcome to Rathe Sealed as well as, especially I would say in Sealed, because if you get a really good pool of them, they can really enhance your deck. In Draft, I'm assuming they're good value, but obviously you want to really aim for your class cards in Draft. So no combos here. So pretty good. I would say this pool is pretty solid. I also have like a Sink Below blue. I have a Sink Below red and a Movable red. So the next thing is really defense reactions. Most likely, unless you go super overboard, defense reactions are really solid against like Guardian with their Dominate. If you can get it in their arsenal against Reprise for Warrior. Brute also has Intimidate, so you have like a free attack defense reaction in your arsenal. Getting defense reactions are really tempo players in Sealed and Limited, so getting like an Unmovable, pitching a blue card for it. Sink Below also to like fix your hand. Again, really strong in Sealed. You're like, wow, this hand is really not aggressive. I'm just gonna like take this damage and then I'm not gonna really able to dish it back. I kind of have to get like a soft turn against my opponent. Sink Below could completely change that. You Sink Below, block 4 damage, which could block an on-hit effect like a Red Snatch, or block that Scar for a Scar. And then you sink one of your sort of mediocre cards, pull a really strong card, and now your whole next turn is just completely switched around. Now you've got potential to really turn the tide in the game. So that's pretty much the pool. Nothing really of note. I think maybe as we go toward the classes, I might speak more to the pool, but I've also tried my best while I'm looking at the pool to think about, try to get a gauge of where the generic's going to pull you, and then you're kind of hoping for the class to really shine, and then the generics really shine with that pool. So we're just going to start here. We got our 4 classes. So you've got Warrior, you've got Guardian, you've got Brute, and you've got the Ninja. Generally, I mean, if you're new to Flesh and Blood, you can only play 1 class. So you're choosing which class has the best potential and then combining it with your generic pool, and that's really what you're going to be doing. Generally, you don't get enough cards. You're building a 30-card deck. Generally, you'll always play all of your class cards unless you just get like a bonkers sealed pool. So that's something, yeah. So with that, why is this guy over here? Well, we'll put him over there. So let's look at Warrior. So Warrior is very weapon focused. You want to look for cards that buff your weapon, that give your weapon go again, or your attacks go again, and you want high value attack reactions. So things like Iron Song Response, what's that one? Stroke of Foresight. Biting Blade is also a really strong card. Razor Reflex in your generic pool, but speaking specifically of this, that's for attack reactions. High value cards, Driving Blade, Warrior's Valor is a rare, so if you can get like one or two of those, really strong. You can see I have a Driving Blade, I have a Warrior's Valor. One thing that I think is a slight, it's a mediocre card, but I think I have too many of them to really play Warrior, is this Nature's Past Pilgrimage. So it's an okay card. It basically gives your it's a buff card, and it allows you to once you buff the attack, if the attack hits, you can look for a card in you can look at the top card of your deck and reveal it. If it's an action card, you can put it face down in your arsenal. So it gives you card advantage. It buffs up your attack. I would say, the red one's really strong, gives you +3. But you can see here I have a yellow one, I have red one, 2 yellow ones, and a blue one. And if those were like Driving Blades to give my weapon go again, to just for people who are maybe new, the idea with the Warrior is your Dawn Blade. If you hit for the second time in a turn, you can get a counter, and that's incredibly strong in any sort of limited format. So your first goal for Warrior is to try to facilitate that pattern. Attack with your weapon, give it go again with like Warrior's Valor, Driving Blade. Warrior's Valor is conditional on hit. Then you're going to secure that hit with a attack reaction, such as like Iron Song Response, Stroke of Foresight, Biting Blade. I have an overpowered here, you can see. I have a Stroke of Foresight blue. But the downside is that if those are not really heavily towards the downside, or like yellows and reds, there's too many blues, you're going to have weak attack reactions, which may be sought by like weaker defense reactions. So, the +3 really requires like a Sink Below yellow or red, but the blue one won't really help your opponent. So, not really happy about this. There's a Steel Blade Shunt, which is really strong, so it would short my defensive properties. 2 Sharpened Steel yellows, not bad. Only 1 Driving Blade and 1 Warrior's Valor. So I'm talking about, and I have no Refraction Bolters, so we can talk about equipment in a second, but I have 2 opportunities to give my weapon go again in this card pool. One is conditional, one is unconditional. It's a yellow, which is fine, so I'm relying on like a blue card to play Driving Blade yellow, attack. I've got decent, I could play like a Nature's Path into a Driving Blade, give it like +5, but that's just too many resources. So not really happy about this pool. Some blues, some decent yellows, not enough really high quality reds. I really wanted to see like, just more Driving Blades or anything. I just think those 4 Nature Path Pilgrimage really ate up a lot of more valuable slots. Otherwise, I think, if those 3 were just like a Stroke of Foresight, or those 4 were like a Stroke of Foresight, maybe potentially a Warrior's Valor. Again, it's a rare, so it's not something that maybe will happen. But then that might have moved me in. And also, if you're looking at the generic pool, there's no red Razor Reflex. There's no really strong like attack. There's a few, but nothing really in the red pool and the yellow pool of generics that are really driving me into Warrior. So let's talk, and again, Refraction Bolters really does, Refraction Bolters, when your weapon hits, you can destroy Refraction Bolters. They block for 1 with, what's it called? Battle Worn, so you can block with them. And then you can destroy them on hit to give your weapon go again. So super strong because you can leave it out on the field, and then when you feel you have a good hand and it's the right time to use them, you can give your weapon go again. So super strong. It also gives your weapon go again for free. So Guardian. Guardian, you're looking for a bunch of blues, a bunch of reds. Yellows are okay, but you're looking for, in a Guardian 30 card build, you probably need like 10 blues. And you want 10 blues that are pretty good because otherwise you're not going to be able to pay for your attacks. You're going to get stuck with a lot of red hands. A lot of your red cards cost a lot. So if you don't have enough blue cards to compensate for that, you will end up with pitching 3 reds to swing with Anathos because you have nothing else you can do. This pool's okay. You've got some attacks. I got a Staunch Response blue, pretty strong, pays for itself. Or it's a blue card that pays for something else. It's blue, which is fine. So, the red one is also good, but the blue one's actually probably almost some preferable because, again, you could have more red attacks. Say blue, pitch another blue, staunch response comes back around. You could then pitch it or play it. Um, you've got some life game cards for Blessing of Deliverance, some attacks here. For War is a super. It basically gives your equipment +1 block. If you have a lot of Goliath gauntlets, for example, in cross strap, since they don't have blade break or battle worn, they don't take a -1, so you could actually block with them if they break for the entire turn, or you could block with them until for each chain that your opponent creates for that turn. Cartilage Crush, a bunch of attacks. Emerging Power is an aura that gives you +3, so you play it out, and the next turn you get a +3. Stonewall Confidence allows your cards with +3 or greater. They get +4 while defending, so it's basically a card that is really good if you can predict your opponent's big turns, and you can then only have to block with like 1 or 2 cards. So, but it is an aura. So one thing I looked at, I was like, okay, I have a lot of auras. I have like Forge for War, Emerging Power, Stonewall Confidence, Emerging Power, and a Blessing of Deliverance. So it's a lot of auras and not a lot of attacks. Auras can be they can be okay, I would say, in sealed if that's kind of the path you lean down and you're like, okay, very aura heavy, going to be playing a lot of auras combo with it. The risk of auras, especially the pump auras, is that your opponent knows that you're going to be trying to leverage it, and they're just going to do their best to prevent you from having enough cards to pay for the attack that it will leverage. Emerging Power does not work on your Anathos weapon. It has to be an attack action card. So if my opponent played Emerging Power on their previous turn, my goal would be to strip as many cards from their hand as possible to prevent them from being able to leverage it. And if they can't leverage it, then it was a wasted card because it just cost them 2, they had to pitch for it, et cetera, et cetera. So the last card in Guardian is the Helm of Eisen Peak. It's the Guardian equipment head. It's a pretty solid card in niche conditions. One thing that's great about it is it blocks for 1 and it has Battle Worn. Meaning that you can block with it and it still sticks around. And its action can be pretty relevant in sealed, mainly because as a Guardian player, you're trying to like kind of set up big turns. Sometimes what ends up happening is your opponent has a really strong turn and all you've really got is like you could play like an aura and then pop Helm of Eisen Peak. So what it does is as an action, you can pay 1 resource, you can destroy it, and your hero gains +1 intellect until the end of turn. So you're able to draw up to 5 cards because your base intellect is 4, you get +1, so you draw up to 5. 2 things about Helm of Eisen Peak: it costs 1 resource, so you have to have a card in hand, and it doesn't have Go Again. So most of the time, if you're playing it, I guess what the best thing you could have is like a Scar for a Scar Red with Go Again. You pitch 1 resource, then you pop Helm, you get 5 cards. The other thing you could think about doing is having 2 cards. You could pay for this with 1, pop it, arsenal the other card, and get a 6-card hand. The value of that is that you have more to block with next turn, allowing you to then regain tempo. So not only is it block for 1, but it can actually, at the right time, it can turn the tide of tempo. So for the generic pool for Guardian, generally you're looking for a lot of blue cards that cost 3 that are attacks. That synergizes well with Anathos because you're pitching cards that cost 3 or greater. It's paying for the attacks. Also, what's great about 3-cost attacks is you pitch a blue to play a blue, or play the 3-cost attack. So that's something generally you're going to look for. Blue and red cards are generally favorable for Guardian. You want to pitch the blue cards, pay for the red cards, then use the blue cards later on to pay for themselves as attacks, and then also to fuel Anathos as you get later on in the game because you're exhausting your red cards using them to attack. So cards in this pool, there's really not a lot in this pool for Guardian. You have a lot of blue cards, but none of them cost 3 or greater. You have some yellow cards. You have like Yellow Raging Onslaught. You have Slogism, which can potentially be good. Sadly, it's not the blue slogism or the red slogism. Blue slogism can be potentially really good. You pitch a blue, you play a blue. It also works with Anothos because it costs 3. We do have 2 yellow pummels. A pummel is a really strong card in Guardian. You're gonna have a lot of resources available to pitch and play. So like a dominated attack with a pummel is really devastating if you're able to get all those cards together. Sink Below, Unmovable, super strong in Guardian. Guardian wants to keep cards in their hand, so having efficient blocks really can help with that. Red Raging Onslaught definitely would probably go in a Bravo deck. Hits for 7 for 3. Really strong there. Wounded Bull, definitely, because I'm pretty sure that, yeah. So when you play Wounded Bull, if you have less life than your opponent, it goes +1. So it's hitting for 7 or 8, depending on if you have less life than your opponent. So you take a big hit, and then you come back with a large attack there. And it costs 3, which is really strong. Barraging Braunhide, really strong, because if you don't block with 2 or more cards, it gets +1. So it's also hitting you for potentially 8. And then the red pummel. So there's a few good red cards. So you got pummel, Barraging Braunhide, Wounded Bull. You've got the 2 yellow pummels, so you're potentially rocking 3 pummels in a sealed game, which is really strong. And then you have Raging Onslaught, yellow, Slogism yellow, and that's pretty much it. Really, the blues, if you were to play Bravo, you're playing a lot of really junky blues. I feel like they would really not synergize too well with the deck. You only have 4 blues in class. And then you have a good amount of, reds, but a lot, like we spoke about earlier in the video, lots of auras that could potentially really clog up. And so the generic pool really doesn't complement what Bravo's trying to do with his deck. So that's Bravo. Moving on to Brute. Caveat, Brute is not my my expertise. And generally I have not really drafted or delved into the card pool for Brute. I probably have the least experience with the cards and what they do and their values. So for example, I believe there is only, I think, Wrecker Romp, Savage Swing, right? Savage Swing costs 7, it's a digital cost, discard a card. I couldn't tell you that without reading the card. So all of the cards kind of sound the same to me. But in general, what Brute's trying to do is you're trying to have a lot of 6 attack cost cards to trigger Intimidate from Rhinar, and a lot of cards gain benefits if you do discard a card with 6 attack or greater. So looking for cards in Brute that have 6 attack or more, so that you can get a high density of those. Things like you have Savage Swing, Wrecker Romp yellow is a 7, and then actually I think Wrecker Romp blue is one of the few blue cards in Rhinar that is 6 attack or greater. So as well as having the 6 attack or greater, there's a few buff cards. So Primeval Bell is a good one. As an additional cost to play Primeval Bell, discard a random card. Again, back to that random element. And then your next Brute attack cost gains +5, and it is a free buff. But downside is you have to discard an additional card. You have Awakening Bellow, which intimidates and gives you an extra Brute attack +3. And then I don't think there's an Awakening Bellow up here in blue, but everything else is an attack. So we've got like a 7 cost attack, 7, 5, 6, 5, 4. So everything else above that's going to be less. So only a few 6 cost attacks and then a few buff cards. It's somebody more experienced with Brute and building sealed card pool will probably give you better advice. I sadly cannot. But with regards to the card pool, you're looking at, again, 6 attack. For the generic card pool, you're looking at a 6 attack or greater, which could be like Raging Onslaught, Wounded Bull, Barraging Braunhide, Wounding Bull. So you have a few of them, which could be helpful. You have like a Slogism probably won't work in the deck. You could run like some of the cheaper ones. Pummel, pretty strong. So you've got 3 pummels that could potentially help in the deck. But I would say it would probably, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel. I would not feel confident playing a brute deck in WTR sealed. I think it's similar to Levia in Monarch, is that just evaluating the quality of your pool and coming up a win condition can be very, very hard. So, so that's brute. Probably not going to play brute because I don't feel confident. I don't really see a lot of high value 6 attack cards that are really pushing me into brute. Yeah, there's pummel. There's maybe 6 or 7 cards, but since I'm only rocking like 13, there's probably maybe 10 to 15 cards here. I need like 15 cards from my generic pool to build a 30 card deck. So not feeling confident there. So moving to Ninja. So Ninja does 2 things in its deck. It has the Kodachis, which are 1 attack, once per turn attack. Well, there is a card with cost 0 in your pitch zone. Harmonized Kodachi gains go again and hits for 1. So you have 2 of these. You have a left and a right one. Generally with Ninja, you're looking for 0 cost blue cards. That allows you to do Kodachi attack, go again, Blotchy attack, go again, and then attack with a 1 cost attack. It could be anything. Leg tap cost 1 to start your combo. So having that ability in your deck in a high volume is really strong. Being able to consistently turn over turn, block with 3 cards if you must, then Kodachi attack with a blue card, pitch it, put it on the bottom of your deck, and then move on to the next turn. It is really strong, especially in sealed. Most people will take most of the Kodachi attacks until they start getting low, and then you get a card for each time you attack with the Kodachi. Other things that are really strong with Kodachi is Razor Reflex. So having a few Razor Reflexes to target the Kodachi. You don't get the go again, you may already have it, but late game, if you can actually not use your Razor Reflex reds or such until later on the game, it can force your opponent to overblock. You're attacking for 1 with a red Kodachi, still unheard of, that you pitched early in the game. They have to block for 4, which means 2 cards, right? And then you're doing a second one that will take 2 cards, and then you're doing an attack that will actually maybe win you the game. So that's something potentially very strong with the Kodachis. So one thing that's very nice about that is you have a pretty good built-in win condition. So that can be it can be something that can be relied on in a sealed game. The other side of Katsu is the combo cards. There are 3 combos. There's the head combo, the leg combo, and the wind combo. You have head jab into open the center into fluster fist. Fluster fist is a rare. Then you have leg tap into rising knee thrust into blackout kick. Blackout kick is a rare. And then you have surging strike into whelming gust wave into Magenchi release, which is a super, into Lord of Wind, which is a majestic. So most likely not going to get that combo off. Probably only the first 2 in sealed play. Maybe you'll get lucky to do Magenchi release, but Magenchi release really is a facilitator for Lord of Wind, and Lord of Wind has its own sort of combo effect. But the base 3 combos you can see here are highly represented. So I have 3 head jabs, I have 2 open the centers, I have 2 surging strikes, I have 3 whelming gust waves, I have 2 leg taps, I have a blackout kick, and I have a rising knee thrust, and then I have a flick flack. So all of my ninja cards are helping me facilitate the combo ability of my deck. So yes, I could use Katsu to find another piece of the combo, but if in sealed play, if you have enough of the combo pieces, especially if you have a decent number of duplicates, and I actually only have duplicates except for rising knee thrust and blackout kick, I could naturally draw into these effects. Also, arsenaling definitely gives you a strong potential that you then can naturally combo out. And being able to get those combo effects off really forces your opponent to block, which then keeps your tempo up. Then also mixing in the Kodachi's attacks with the combos, so you're attacking for 2 with the Kodachi's, and then you're comboing up after that, can really put a strain on your opponent's ability to block, or they take damage, right? So they're like, oh, I'll take the 2 Kodachi, then you come in with a combo card. They don't know if you're going to search or you have the card naturally. They have to stress about blocking that. If they block that, then you may have the combo naturally, then you just play the combo, and then that also can stress their hand for blocks as more, because Whelming Gustwave has a really strong on-hit effect, which will let you draw a card. It has to go again with the combo, so you can actually continue your turn by potentially drawing into a strong card, again pushing more damage through. Open the Center is really strong because it has go again and dominate. Really potentially good with Heartened Cross Straps and Goliath Gauntlet. Same with Surging Strike, cost 2. Can be really good with Goliath Gauntlet and Hardened Cross Straps. What's great about Open Center doesn't work with Hardened Cross Straps, sorry, just to make it like that. If you break the chain with Hardened Cross Straps, you will not be able to get the combo effect. Really, Hardened Cross Straps is really for Surging Strike. Goliath Gauntlets works for Open the Center, though, because you can crack Goliath Gauntlets, play Head Jab, then play Open the Center, and Goliath Gauntlet will only apply to Open the Center because it is the next card with cost 2 or greater. It won't care about Head Jab. The downside is that you're telegraphing that you have Open the Center, but maybe that's something, maybe that will win you the game. So you're just like, hey, Goliath Gauntlets, Head Jab, they block. They're like, okay, I block for 3, and then you Open the Center for 7, or 8, sorry, because it gets 5 plus 1 for its combo, then plus 2 for Goliath Gauntlet. 8 with Dominate, well, if they don't have any sort of block for Dominate, then they can block for 3, still taking 5, which is potentially a game winner. So Flick Flack is also just really strong. Having, I would say, having any in your pool can really help you against like Dorinthia or even Brute if they're making multiple attacks. But or even Ninja, because Ninja's going wide. So good pickup there for the sealed pool. So you've got that, and then let's take a look at the generic pool. So one thing that's really strong about this generic pool is the number of 0-cost blues I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 0-cost blue cards that then facilitate Kadachi. I could discard them to search for Katsu, which would be discouraged because they're good for blue. Then for yellow, I have 1, 2, 0 costs, and then I've got the Nimble Strike, which I think is really strong. It's just a 3-cost attack. Could be good after 2 Kadachis and then swing for 1, just pushing more damage through. You've got Slogism, really not good. Pummel is pretty situational. I would say you really only have a few cards. You have Open the Center, Surging Strike, and that's about it that you would use Pummel. So I would not play Pummel in this deck. Maybe if you had a ton of Surging Strikes, you got 5 of them, maybe Pummel could be really cool because it forces them to discard a card. It could be pretty nasty, but not in this low curve deck. Sink Below, really strong. Ninjas really values the ability to have defense, keep cards in hand for the combo. So having an unmovable Sink Below free allows you to fix your hand. Maybe you have too many blues. You get like a blue. Since there's so many blues in the Ninja deck, if you look, there could be like 15 blues. You get a handful of blues. You can Sink Below and fix your hand and maybe get a red card and kind of push through a little bit more damage. Immovable, same deal with the ton of blues. It costs 3. So being able to play it and then pitch a blue card because you have so many of them makes Unmovable really strong in the deck because it synergizes well with your cost curve. Raging Onslaught is an interesting choice. One thing about Raging Onslaught is it costs 3, so again, back to Unmovable, you have so many blues, so Raging Onslaught is actually a really potential option to have just like a big attack. So you have like Open the Center, which can hit for 5 or a little higher. You've got Surging Strike with red, which hits for 5 as well, but like being able to have just like an extra 7 at the end, so you have like 2 blues, you Kadachi, and then you pitch another blue and you Raging Onslaught, and they're just like, wow, for 7. And it doesn't have an on-hit effect, but it's still just damage. So pretty strong there. You got Scour the Battlescape, cost 0, so not a bad card to include in a Katsu deck. It hits for 3. It has its ability to like go again if you get it in your arsenal. Demolition Crew, not really. Barraging Braunheim, similar to Raging Onslaught, is that like, if you're seeking more card slots, you're not really seeing what you need for damage. Barraging Braunheim could be an inclusion. It costs 3, so it could offset one of your you know, like Nimble Strike could come out and put Barraging Bronhide, and now you've kind of increased your cost curve. But since you have so many blues, you feel pretty confident about playing Barraging Bronhide. Pummel, again, not really there. Flock of the Featherwalkers, pretty good in the deck. I would say it's a hard card. It's a situational card because it costs so many. It also doesn't have Go Again, so really Flock of the Featherwalkers is great if you have like Snapdragon Scalers in your pool, or you have like a Razor Reflex that's you know, a few of them. So you could do Flock into Go Again, giving Flock Go Again, like with Snapdragon Scalers or Razor Reflex, and then using the Quicken token immediately to give like an attack Go Again that doesn't normally have it, like Barraging Bronhide or Raging Onslaught, or even like Nimble Strike or Snatch. Snatch is a great combo with Quicken because you have the on-hit effect, and then you also have the threat of Go Again, so it stresses their blocking. So if you haven't noticed, a lot of the cards are sleeved. This is the actual deck that I chose to play. So I played Ninja. I think it was the best option for the quality of combo cards. So you can see that I have duplicates in all the combos except for the Rising Knee Thrust and the Blackout Kick, which I think is fine. You know, you've got the head jab. There's 3 head jabs in the deck. There's 2 up in the centers. There's 2 Surging Strikes, and there's 3 Whelming Gust Waves. And then you have a decent amount of blue cards, and yellow cards and red is a nice spread. And then you have a ton of blue cost, 0 cost cards, or blue 0 cost cards, which I think really sells you in that. And then you have some decent yellow and red cards to fill it out. So there's enough to make it's a 31 card deck in Ninja. And then, so, you know, I really enjoyed it. I was able to be victorious with a 4-1 record with 32 people participating. The only individual I lost to was Dorinthia, and the deck was very strong. The player was incredibly strong, and I really enjoyed playing it. I just, you know, they beat me. So the last card in the pool is the Heart of Findle, and I decided not to play the Heart of Findle in this deck for 2 reasons. One is that this card does not cost 0, so it doesn't really help with the Kodachi strategy, and the other one is it doesn't block. So in Sealed, especially getting a hand, especially because I'm playing the Time Snap Potion, that would be 2 cards in my deck that don't block. Ninja already has a lot of 2-block cards, so you're blocking efficiently anyways. So adding an additional card to my deck that doesn't do help for either strategy, I think wasn't really necessary. Also, as I was thinking about when I was playing the game, I was sort of thinking about, would I gain life from pitching this card? And a lot of times, half the time I'm at head-on life because I'm trying to be the aggressor. So even if I were to pitch the card, I don't think I would gain any value. So essentially, this would be like a cracked bauble, but in blue, right? So that's something to think about when you're pulling high rarity cards. Is sometimes it's great that you add them to your collection and you'll have them later for constructed, but you don't want to be blinded by them to include them. Just blindly think about why you're including them, how they're helping your strategy. And a big example is as I played a Welcome to Rathe draft with Crippling Crush in my deck. I was playing Guardian, and it was incredibly hard to get it to play it because of how aggressive it was and the cost curve for it. Without Tectonic Plating, you don't get to reduce its cost to 6, and so you end up pitching 3 cards for it, whereas in Classic Constructed or Blitz or Constructed Play, you would pitch 2 blues. In this case, you have to pitch 2 blues and like another card. So those are things to think about when you're including. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my Sealed recap. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments below.